to Beyond the Couch OT Stories. I am Wendy, and I have a guest speaker today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kaya, and I am happy to be here on the podcast. We're just going to be talking about different effects of vaping on teens and young adults.
And why did you pick this topic?
I picked this topic because I feel like it's pretty prevalent in this generation. I don't know if I would call it a epidemic.
I would say it's an epidemic for
Yeah,
sure. Do you vape yourself?
I do not.
Do you know of friends that vape?
I do,
Okay.
actually. I have had experiences with it, but as of now, I do not. I do not
So you have tried it. Did you
vape.
like it?
I did not like it.
And why did you not like it? Sorry, I know we're getting a little bit personal here.
Oh no, it's fine. I really did want to share like different testimonies and stories, but I had a health scare,
Uh-huh.
and long story short, I was in the hospital not just because of vaping,
Mm-hmm.
but the effects that it had on my heart, and
Oh,
then
wow.
plus like I have hypertension, so
Oh,
that
okay.
on top of doing other things like ah
It just
terrible.
it just was not a good fit for you there.
It was not.
And I don't know if you've watched. There's a documentary out there on a streaming service. I really don't want to mention the name, but it's called Vaping, I believe, is what it's called. And the purpose of it is to talk about kind of how the executives at these different companies introduced vaping, and how at the beginning it was really cool, and how they marketed to children by adding different flavors to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was kind of like, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. But at that time, at the beginning, believe it or not, according to this documentary, vaping did not take off. And they changed their marketing strategy. Of course, it always goes down to their marketing.
Yep.
And once they changed their marketing strategy, and I don't remember specifically what it was, then they started adding flavors and all of this other stuff to it, and then it just shot off.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Like, but why would you specific? You can't even buy nicotine products until you're 18.
Yeah.
So why would you market it to younger people?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like back in the old days,
Mm-hmm.
probably when you weren't alive, it was hip to be smoking. And they would, advertise with these cartoon like characters. And, these housewives had to have a
Mm-hmm.
cigarette. All of the old timey movies, it was cool. They didn't know what the effects were, or maybe they did. They just kept it quiet.
Right.
And so I think that understanding the history of smoking is very important for the tie in for vaping, because it's the same type of issue. People become addicted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, vaping is a lot worse.
Yes.
I had a patient who was like, well, I'm trying to cut back on my smoking, and so what I did is I turned to vaping, and I'm like, whoa, vaping is actually more addictive, and maybe you're going to talk about this in your presentation, so I don't want to jump the gun a little bit about that, but okay, so let you start off a little bit about it.
Okay. So before we got too in depth, I wanted to just break the ice with a couple icebreakers. So my first icebreaker question was, if you could be any crayon color, what would it be and why?
Oh, I like that. That's great. Any crayon color? Oh my goodness. Okay, so do you pick your favorite crayon color or do you go outside the box? I'm gonna say today, I'm gonna say pink.
Okay, why pink?
Because it's beautiful and it's cheerful, and there's just a lot. Pink is associated with so many happy, positive things.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about you?
I think today I'm gonna choose yellow.
Oh, yellow. Why would you choose yellow?
I feel like yellow is like it's such an odd color. Because when I say yellow is my favorite color, people are like yellow.
I know that's just definitely something I haven't heard about.
But I don't know. Like it's a bright color.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. You saw the movie Inside Out, right? And Joy, her dress is yellow. I feel like it's just such a cheery
kind of thing.
color.
The sun, we see the sun is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can definitely say that that's a color I haven't heard of. So good job. Like
Yep.
I'll have to use that in the future.
And then my second question, when you close your eyes, where's the first place that your mind takes you?
Oh gosh, these are great questions. When I close my mind, I guess it would depend on what time of day it is.
Okay.
If it's during the day, it would be regards to what is going on in my schooling, what things are on my to-do list. And then at night, when I am trying to go to sleep, it would be more, I'm a religious person, it would be more about scriptures.
Okay.
And thanking God for today and thinking about the opportunities I have the next day to bring a light of Christ into anybody's lives. You don't have to be a Christian to receive that a good, message that he projects.
Absolutely. I feel like that was a great response. Well, my response, kind of like what you said, it really just depends on the time of the day. But typically in the morning time, when I close my eyes, I guess it's kind of like the opposite of your answer. In the morning, I'm very spiritual. I take a scripture, put it in my brain, and in hopes of letting that scripture take me throughout my day.
That's
And
great.
then in the evening time, it's probably just, I don't know, anything not pertaining to school, just something that'll take me away. Like, I don't know, think of food. I've been in a food mood lately.
Okay.
So, like, I'll think of food or anything that's just not word, school, or whatever.
Well, and I kind of piggybacking off of what you said, I always devote, I have an app that the name is totally blanking out on me right now, and I listen to that. And it's a Bible verse, and then it's also they talk about, whatever is applicable that day. And I feel that if you sprinkle a little bit of spirituality, whatever that looks like to you throughout your day, I think that can help you be more successful in life as a whole.
Absolutely. I agree with that. So now, I guess we've kind of like shared a brief overview of vaping and all of that. So now I want to get into like, I guess any statistics, its prevalence. So I kind of looked it up just a little bit on the CDC. It was saying how 1.6 million middle and high school students are reported to be vaping. But they said it's decreasing. But to me, that's still a lot.
That's a lot.
So it said it's starting to decrease from 2.1 million users since 2023.
Did they say why it was decreasing by chance?
No.
You know, and in that movie that I was talking about, they have devised vaping pens that are very similar to recorders or pens, so the students can sneak that in.
That is crazy.
I know. But you know, that's big tobacco basically, you know, for you. How can we get this into the system so that we can profit from these young children who should not be having cigarettes in the first place, much less vaping? I mean, I think, please correct me if this is not right, that you're supposed to have you're supposed to be 18 years or older to buy even vaping products.
You are.
Is that correct?
You are.
Okay.
But I did see somewhere where it said unless you're 18 and you have a U.S. military ID. I wonder why.
Well, okay, yeah. That's because if you're in the military,
okay,
like when you go to Europe, if you're 18, you can drink in Europe. So I didn't know that it applied here, because you definitely can't drink here at 18. But my son, his band took a school trip, and they went over to Europe, and all of them were 18. And so they all, when we sat down at a meal, you know, if their parents wrote a note saying they were allowed to get a drink, they all got drinks.
Oh, wow.
Which is wine, you know, in Paris. So, but yeah, they were allowed to do that. So it's the same thing with the military. Yeah, I didn't know that applied here, but so that's very interesting.
That's strange.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty interesting to pay attention to. So,
man, okay. So what else?
You know, and I think to think about that, if you think about what are these, you know, because vaping is relatively new to health conditions, and I know that, you know, I don't know if you'll go over this, but vaping is such a concentrated formula that packs a lot of power into those vape capsules, right? So there's a lot of nicotine and toxins, and these children are being hospitalized more and more because of lung disease and, you know, heart conditions, and some people are even dying from it. And so, you know, you have to think about, as an occupational therapist, what is this going to do long term to these individuals? What are we going to be treating in 20 years as far as these individuals who are focused on vaping?
They were saying that with the lung condition, with the vaping, it was called EVALI.
It was called what?
EVALI.
I've never heard of that.
Some type of lung, but the symptoms were very similar to what it would be for just
COPD, chronic
coughing,
obstructive pulmonary disease. And would they end up being on oxygen too?
Yep.
Yeah. It's really sad. I guess every generation has their vices, I guess is the right word, but this is very alarming to me, because I think that it's becoming more and more common, per se, amongst younger and younger children.
That was a question I did have, though. So, like, now, how we're seeing vaping, what was the thing back then? Was it just cigarettes, or like?
Yeah, and it depends on when you're referring to back then. Like how far?
I say late 80s, early
Okay.
90s.
Okay, so it was smoking. That was the big thing back then when I grew up because I graduated high school in 1990. That was the big thing is smoking and drinking.
Mm.
Um, there wasn't really anything else. Like, I mean, of course, drugs have always been drugs.
Right.
But yeah, I think the majority of it, I think vaping is relatively new to the 2000s. I think I'll have to figure out what the name of the movie is when it talks about the vaping. But it was a very great document that walked you through the whole evolution of the process of one particular company. I can't remember the name of the company because it came out on a streaming platform a while ago, and but I watched it because anything health related, it impacts us as occupational therapists. And so I definitely like to hear about that kind of stuff and see if I can study it. What evidence base can I grab from this?
Absolutely. Now, I think, what if we identify some triggers? What are some things that are causing this just instant vaping?
Yeah. Well, you're young. What do you think?
Um, with experiences and people that I do know that do it,
Mm-hmm.
I say stress.
Okay.
It could be a sensory thing. I know somebody said that
Mm-hmm.
it's like the smoke, just
Mm-hmm.
seeing the smoke. Um,
That's interesting.
what else?
So it's not necessarily putting it inside the mouth.
Some people
It's
say that too.
okay because I could see that definitely being a sensory aspect of it. I wouldn't think that the smoke, the exhale would be as rewarding. Is that the right word? Rewarding as it would be, but I mean, I guess maybe so. But what are some of the other reasons that you've seen?
Um, a lot of people think it just became a part of their routine,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they smoked other substances before, and they were thinking, okay, maybe this. I'm gonna try vaping, and thinking it's a healthier option.
Yeah, and that movie is called The Big Vape: The Rise and Fall of Juul, Juul. And I think that if you are not a consumer, or maybe even if you are a consumer of vaping products, I definitely think it's worth watching. Again, it's out there streaming on different platforms, and they specifically marketed to children. And I mean, what adult wants like lemon, a cigarette taste?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the patient that I was telling you about, hers was, she said she's trying to stop smoking, and hers was watermelon and like sour something.
Mm.
And that's like the flavor that you get. And I'm just like, okay, number one, watermelon makes me sick. But why would you want a flavor? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I've never, like, I grew up in a household of smokers.
Mm-hmm.
Both my parents did. Both my mother-in-law, father-in-law. No, not my correction. My mother, my stepfather, my father, and my stepmother. So they grew up. I grew up with smoking. And so whenever they would give us anything, everything would go outside in the, you don't really notice it as much when you're constantly in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
But when you step out, now it literally makes me nauseous having to go into people's houses for home health and smell that stuff over and over again. It's ugh. But
It
yeah.
lingers.
Mm-hmm.
Really bad. Okay. We kind of talked about different health concerns just a little bit, but besides like respiratory issues and cardiovascular, what else do you think like are some issues from vaping that could happen?
Well, like, what do you think? If you think about the cardiopulmonary system and basically putting toxins into it, what else do you foresee or could you foreshadow difficulties with?
I immediately think the brain.
Okay, so explain that.
Just with smoking in general, I feel like it clogs your thinking process, and it alters that whole system.
Yeah.
And then I feel like that leads into like the mental health aspect of it as well. Like
Okay.
I don't know per se
Yeah.
now, but I feel like that has a big effect on it.
I do know, and I don't know that it's been studied or not, but smoking does increase your likelihood for having a stroke.
Really?
Yeah, my father he was actually in the hospital. He had a massive stroke. They gave him the medicine, the great medicine that's out there nowadays to counteract it within minutes. And unfortunately, he was just too far gone. The clot was too deep in the brain. And I 100% contribute it to smoking.
Wow.
But, it's really challenging because you have society telling individuals, well, you really need to stop. You really need to stop. You really need to stop. And, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
And we as occupational therapists can come in and discuss and tell them the benefits of stopping smoking and how much it improves their lives. But if they're not ready to quit, they're not ready to quit. And there's nothing you can do about that. And I think that that's the very big frustrating part of something that's dynamic like smoking. Smoking is 100% preventable if you just don't put that cigarette in your mouth, right? I mean, you can attach yourself to something else. You said stress, sensory, can you replace that with something else? I don't know. That's definitely something. And I think that I have not seen, but I have not been looking for to see if they've studied any of the effects of vaping, a long-term study. What really does it do to the body? I haven't seen anything. So I think that that's going to be something that'll be up and coming for sure.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Okay. Can we discuss some different occupational justices or injustices?
Okay.
I think most definitely financial restraints. What else could we be putting our finances into instead of buying a vape?
Exactly.
That could be very expensive.
Yeah.
If
I don't even know how much vape cartridges go for.
They're expensive, and depending on like what chemical or liquid that you want in your vape, because they have the THC vapes too, or the one
I
with the
did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it just depends on what you want to put into. I think the devices itself, they're not that expensive, but it's the liquid.
Yeah. I didn't know that you could put THC in it. Well,
yes,
that makes a lot of sense. I hate to see that that's happening. Well, and I think that, and I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that you can get cartridges that are more powerful. I think, at least that's the implication I got from that movie, to where it makes you want to smoke them like repeatedly over and over again. So not only do you have the natural addiction from smoking, then you also have the addiction of I want to smoke another because it tastes good. I guess tastes good. I don't know. This is such an area that I'm not knowledgeable about. I've never ever smoked. The only thing I've ever smoked was candy cigarettes, and that was just to pretend to be cool when I was, elementary school kid. I've never had the desire to do any of that at all. So I don't know. This is like a outside of my realm of knowledge kind of thing. So yeah.
You sound like my mom when you say that. Like, she cannot stand it.
Yeah, and when I was pregnant, when you're pregnant, all kinds of things happen to your body. And I was definitely, my sense of smell was very heightened with it. And since I was pregnant, don't even put anything in front of me because it's just, it's gross. Yeah.
I'd also say like a reduced in participation in their activities, daily activities. Of course, negative impact on our health.
Because they're outside all gathered out smoking, and there would be times when I worked a full-time job back in my first career, and everybody would go outside. Everybody, once an hour or twice an hour, and spend 20 minutes out there. And I would go out there just because I wanted to feel part of the group. I wasn't smoking, and I would sit in a different area, but it's like, oh, everybody's going out for a smoke. Okay, let's go.
Smoke break.
So, I mean, you kind of feel left out a little bit depending upon, what office it is, because there's a lot of politics that are discussed and office things going on in these meetings, quote, unquote. Yeah, so.
I'm kind of glad that you did say that, though, because that is the kind of point to where, specifically, I would say teens, or I guess adults as well, with the influence of seeing my peers or anybody else out, especially in social events or whatever, like, everybody has a vape. Anywhere you go, somebody is holding a vape in their hand.
So you're still actively seeing that. So I haven't really seen it as much. And I have seen it, different, like movie theaters and stuff like that. And people are blowing the big smoke. And it's like, I don't want to inhale your smoke. So thank you, but no thank you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I definitely think that that's very bad news to me. I did not think it was as prevalent as it once was. So maybe it is, and I just haven't been exposed to it. I don't know.
It's to me, I think it's getting worse. Like, there's just so many different forms of that. Because they have the hookah thing too. With hookah, the little tall, it's the same thing, but it has like different plugs and straws, and you do the same thing.
Oh, really?
It's like a water based, and they use a shisha. It's a tobacco.
Oh.
Yep, and use a coal to light it.
And so, like, where is that happening? Because I definitely haven't seen that.
Everywhere. Like, if you go out to, like, a brunch or a dinner, like, and that's one thing I do not like at all. Like, why are we smoking at dinner?
Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah. And, I've had patients say that once I stopped smoking, my taste came back. My taste, I could taste food, and everything tastes differently. but I guess I have heard of that, like on one of the Real Housewives. I think they did that, but I didn't know what it was because I'm very sheltered-ish, to where sometimes I don't always pay attention to that kind of stuff, and obviously I guess I haven't. So,
I guess to just top it off, ways that we as occupational therapists can help these individuals. I mean, like the process of change, they have to go through that within themselves. But what are some things that we can push to help with that, the process?
So I'm going to toss that back to you. And I want you to relate this to the OTPF.
Okay.
Maybe explain what is the OTPF to our audience in case they don't know.
The OTPF is the scope of practice, the domain for occupational therapist practitioners. Yeah. It's like the quote unquote Bible for OT. It has our whole outline and domain for us to practice.
Yeah, it has everything that we should be addressing is in this one document. And we use that document to help justify what our interventions are. It kind of gives us a foundation to stand on. Yeah, good foundation to stand on. And everything that we do as occupational therapists are based upon that. So in looking and thinking about the OTPF, what do you feel we could do to help these individuals?
I would say one thing for the younger generation,
quantify younger generation.
For kids who may still be like middle school, high school who are vaping, I would look to the parents, like educating parents. What are some other like coping strategies that we could address, just more of like the mental aspect of it, because
for the parents or the kids?
Kids.
Okay.
For parents, educating for sure.
Okay.
But for students, I would say like different coping strategies, because no one, well, I wouldn't say no one, but unless you're like surrounded by it, but what is causing or triggering me to want to instantly pick up a device and smoke it? So tapping into the deeper level of it, I guess I'd say. So understanding that.
I think you're right. I think, I am not smart enough to know a lot of things in this world. One of them being, I think that our families definitely are lacking in a lot, because a lot of people don't have a good core family anymore. And so, especially the economy that we're currently in, it costs so much for gas and groceries and rent and all of this good stuff. So, what does the families look like? A lot of them they don't have a good foundation. And in my opinion, that boils down to a lot, because if you don't have a good, whatever that looks like for you, a good mom, a good dad, maybe in the same household, a mom, a dad, there's so many dynamics of the families these days. And, maybe those parents aren't there, and that's why they got into vaping, is because their friends offered it, and maybe that's something that, I think would definitely be worth, studying and trying to figure out is, why did you start vaping individually. And then maybe, being able to study those individuals over a period of time. And, or, we are advocates by nature, and we are teachers as occupational therapists. So how could you see getting some of this information out? Just, within, let's say, a little college, a community college setting. How would you think you could get around with that?
Kind of like how, is it called Dare? I think it was like Dare.
Yeah.
Like when they used to come to like the high schools and middle schools. Something similar to that, just raising the awareness of it. We know that vaping is out here.
Yes.
But on our end, identifying the causes, like the triggers, and making sure that everyone is being heard in that aspect of the awareness of
the dangers.
Yes. The dangers of vaping or smoking in general, but specifically vaping. Talking to our counselors and our teachers, faculty, and possibly like just having I don't want to say kumbaya, but like like just a little station somewhere where people could come and pick up pamphlets or just anything informational that could help them.
I think if we focus on the younger generations, I think, elementary school, I think that would be a good target audience to address. Because, if we start, looking at child development, where are those peer influences going to come in? They're going to come into middlehood, right? And so if we've already started to educate them beforehand, I think that would be a great area for us to initially start things. So, and maybe we start, obviously we would need to start very simplistic based upon their age. And then maybe, we send home some information to the parents based on, whatever you want to focus on, and help educate the parents, because there are some parents who work a lot of hours to help support their family, and maybe an older sibling is helping take care of the younger siblings. And so I think that we have to look at, it's a multi-layered approach that I think that we would have to do. And I think even putting out statistics about if you start vaping in this middle school, this potentially is what your life is going to look like. It's very hard to predict who's going to get cancer, who's not going to get cancer. Actually, more people get lung cancer that were never smokers.
Wow.
But because of secondhand smoke, they're the ones who get the cancer. So, I think in premising and talking about that, I think that would be important to get across to everybody. So, I'm going to let you finish up with your last thoughts here.
That was pretty much it for me. I feel like we hit a lot of the big points, addressing what vaping is in general, addressing the different health concerns. I didn't even know that a lot of people who are getting lung cancer is from secondhand smoke. Like,
yeah.
That's dangerous, because if I'm not
dangerous.
even participating in the act of doing it, and I'm still like...
Yeah. You probably don't know this reference, but Christopher Reeves was a really big, famous actor back in, I think it was the 80s, 90s. And he became paraplegic And he passed away.
Right.
And then, like, I think it's a year after that, his wife died from lung cancer. She never smoked.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So the kids
sad.
were orphaned and didn't have anybody. So,
Wow.
and I've got quite a few patients who have lung cancer and they've never smoked.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, what about our kids, like
Mhm.
little infants?
Yeah, who are subjected to all of that, those toxins within the environment. And you know, I think another good area of study would be is, you know, you see if you were abused as a child,
Mhm.
you're 50% more likely to abuse. Well, what about, and I haven't seen it, maybe it exists, if your parents are smokers, what is the percentage that you're likely to be a smoker?
Wow, that's a great question.
You know, I mean, I think that would be something interesting to, you know, hypothesize and maybe do some research on and try to come up with that answer. Just for curiosity's sake, you know, to see what kind of happens. So, okay. Anything else you'd want to contribute, Kaya?
That's all I have.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you again for tuning in to Beyond the Couch OT Stories.